He looked like a Greek god, starred in $100 million blockbuster, and inspired millions, yet there was one man he absolutely couldn't stand, and now we know why. Before the world ever knew him as Hercules, Steve Reeves was just a skinny kid growing up in Montana during the Great Depression. No spotlight, no fame, just a boy who lost his father way too early, raised by a single mother with nothing but grit, survival instinct, and a dream no one believed in. But even back then, he knew he was meant for more. Not in an arrogant way, in a burning, silent, unshakable way. While other kids played, Reeves was building his body. Every rep in the garage, every calorie counted, every second in the mirror, chasing perfection. Not for vanity, but for control. In a world where everything was uncertain, his body was the one thing he could master. By the time he hit his 20s, he wasn't just strong, he was mythical. Not bloated like modern bodybuilders, but symmetrical, proportioned, sculpted, like a living statue from ancient Greece. He took every title in sight: Mr. Pacific Coast, Mr. America, Mr. World, Mr. Universe. By 1950, he wasn't just winning, he was the standard. But here's the twist. Behind all that perfection, he was still the outsider, still underestimated, still fighting for respect. And Hollywood, it would give him the fame he deserved, but it would cost him something much bigger. Before the world ever knew him as Hercules, Steve Reeves was just a skinny kid growing up in Montana during the Great Depression. No spotlight, no fame, just a boy who lost his father way too early, raised by a single mother with nothing but grit, survival instinct, and a dream no one believed in. But even back then, he knew he was meant for more. Not in an arrogant way, in a burning, silent, unshakable way. While other kids played, Reeves was building his body. Every rep in the garage, every calorie counted, every second in the mirror, chasing perfection. Not for vanity, but for control. In a world where everything was uncertain, his body was the one thing he could master. By the time he hit his 20s, he wasn't just strong, he was mythical. Not bloated like modern bodybuilders, but symmetrical, proportioned, sculpted, like a living statue from ancient Greece. He took every title in sight: Mr. Pacific Coast, Mr. America, Mr. World, Mr. Universe. By 1950, he wasn't just winning, he was the standard. But here's the twist. Behind all that perfection, he was still the outsider, still underestimated, still fighting for respect. And Hollywood, it would give him the fame he deserved, but it would cost him something much bigger. And if you think that story's wild, wait until you hear who tried to humiliate him at the peak of his fame. You won't believe how far the jealousy went, so stay with me. When Reeves stepped onto the set of Hercules in 1958, he wasn't just acting, he was proving a point to every producer who called him too pretty, every agent who said, "You'll never make it," and every executive who smirked at his muscles and said, "You're not a real actor." Hercules was supposed to be a cheap foreign fantasy flick. Nobody expected anything. But Reeves, he turned it into a phenomenon. The film exploded. Over $100 million at the box office. That's Marvel money by 1950 standards. Suddenly, every studio wanted a piece of him. Italy, France, Spain. He became an international superstar. But here's the dark side no one talks about. Behind the chariots, swords, and sand, Reeves was alone. He was making millions overseas, yet back home in Hollywood, he was still seen as the muscle guy, never offered the serious roles, never invited to the big tables, always boxed in by the very body he built. And as he climbed higher, he started noticing the snakes in the system. Fake smiles, empty praise, power games, and one man in particular stood out, Raymond Burr. More on him in a second, but first, you need to understand why Reeves' rise wasn't just success. It was a ticking time bomb waiting to explode. Steve Reeves wasn't just a bodybuilder who got lucky in movies. He was a walking contradiction, admired by millions, yet misunderstood by the very system that made him famous. Hollywood liked his body, Hollywood wanted his face, but Hollywood never respected his mind. They wanted him shirtless, silent, smiling, not thinking, not speaking, definitely not challenging the system. But Reeves was no puppet. He read Shakespeare, studied diction, took acting classes every week. He wanted to be great, not just physically, but as an artist. And what did Hollywood do? They boxed him in. He was offered the same role again and again, the muscle man, the warrior, the dumb brute. And the more he said no, the more doors quietly closed. Behind the scenes, execs whispered, "He's difficult. He's arrogant. He should know his place." But Reeves wasn't arrogant. He was just tired of being treated like a prop with abs. And that's when he saw what the game really was. It wasn't about talent. It was about submission. Play nice or get erased. He refused to play, and in return, Hollywood gave him what it gives everyone who won't bow down: silence. But one man didn't just play the game, he controlled it. And Reeves hated him for it. His name? Raymond Burr. Raymond Burr was everything Steve Reeves wasn't, and everything Reeves couldn't stand. Polished, powerful, connected. While Reeves built his fame rep by rep, Burr maneuvered behind the curtain, making deals, making enemies disappear, and always making sure he looked like the good guy. But behind the charming smile, whispers, stories, allegations. People in the industry said Burr had a temper, said he was cold, even cruel. And when Reeves finally met him, it wasn't a handshake. It was a war without words. At a Hollywood gathering, maybe a set, maybe a private function, Reeves and Burr locked eyes. According to insiders, it was instant tension. No smiles, no warmth. Just thinly veiled disrespect from Burr and quiet, burning fury from Reeves. Burr reportedly mocked his acting, called him the pretty boy from Italy, laughed off Hercules like it was a joke. That moment, it wasn't just uncomfortable, it was personal, because Reeves had bled for that success. And Burr just walked in, smirking like it meant nothing. That's when Reeves realized something deeper. Burr wasn't just a rival, he was the embodiment of everything Steve despised about the industry: the ego, the fakeness, the way power was protected while authenticity got punished. From that moment on, Reeves didn't just dislike Raymond Burr, he loathed him. Not because Burr was more famous, not because he had more money, but because he was a reminder that in Hollywood being real meant being disposable. And Steve Reeves, he was very real, and he paid the price. To the average person, Raymond Burr was a household name. He was Perry Mason, Ironside, the man in the suit who always won. Charismatic, confident, powerful. But to Steve Reeves, Raymond Burr was something entirely different. He wasn't just a rival, he was a mask. Behind the camera, Reeves saw what most people missed. A man who smiled with his teeth but spoke with poison. A man who dominated rooms, silenced critics, and crushed competition without ever lifting a finger. Raymond Burr knew the system and how to control it. He used charm when it served him. He used fear when it didn't. Steve Reeves had worked for everything. He bled in gyms, fought in war. He built his career with sweat, not strings. Burr, he floated through doors that were slammed in Reeves's face. He got roles without auditioning. He got respect without earning it. And Reeves saw through all of it. According to those close to Steve, the hatred ran deep, not because Burr was successful, but because of how he became successful. Strategic, cold, ruthless. And the worst part? Burr looked down on Reeves like he was a sideshow, a pretty face, a muscle suit, a gimmick. That smugness, that quiet, backhanded judgment, that was the trigger. Reeves once said he respected anyone who worked hard, actor, athlete, janitor, but the one thing he couldn't stand was a fraud in a crown. And that's exactly who he believed Raymond Burr was. You think that's bad? The moment they ended up in the same room, face to face, it turned ice cold. What Raymond Burr did next, you'd never expected. There was one night, one interaction, one room, where everything, all the resentment, all the silence, almost came to a head. It wasn't a movie set, it wasn't some industry gala, it was a private gathering. Insiders only. No cameras, no publicists, no press, just egos, tension, and too many drinks. Reeves walked in, heads turned, still the Greek god, even off screen. But then Burr walked in, and the air changed. Not with shouting, not with punches, but with something medieval, pure, simmering hate. Witnesses said Burr made a loud joke, a cheap shot about those Hercules movies. Said something like, "What's next for Reeves?" A silent roll as a statue. The room laughed, but not Steve. He didn't flinch, didn't smile, didn't need to. He just looked Burr in the eyes, dead silent, and then walked away. But that moment, it wasn't just an awkward social clash. It was the final confirmation. Reeves now knew Hollywood had two types of people: those who pretend to be heroes, and those who actually live like one, no matter the cost. Raymond Burr was the first, Steve Reeves was the second, and from that day forward, Steve never spoke his name again, except in private with a tone so cold it could cut glass. Reeves eventually walked away from the spotlight. After a shoulder injury filming a chariot scene, he retired. No dramatic farewell, no farewell tour. He lived peacefully on a ranch, wrote books, and spread his message. Bodybuilding should be a health-oriented sport, not a drug-oriented one. Still, the ghost of that Hollywood toxicity of Burr never left him. Raymond Burr remained in the spotlight. Steve Reeves remained in people's hearts. One chased power, the other, peace. When Reeves passed away in 2000 from lymphoma complications, fans mourned not just an actor but a philosophy.